The Florida Rights Restoration Coalition is committed to ending disenfranchisement and discrimination against people with convictions. Joining us now is the executive director of the organization, Desmond Meade. Desmond, thank you for being with us today.
Clarence, thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you here, actually. So your organization has been nominated for a Nobel Prize. Talk about your reaction when you found that out.
Yeah, that's that's amazing. Every day I think about it, it just blows my mind, for so many reasons. First of all, just to even be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize is like the ultimate honor. And then on top of that, to be an organization that's led by people who have a previous felony conviction, that's historic. It's never happened before. And so I'm living in the moment. Our organization is living in the moment. That is somewhat surreal, but I think it's a symbol of really the work that we've been doing and the importance of that work.
And speaking of that work, and I'm proud that it's gone global, but speaking of that work, talk about some of the challenges that people who are reentering society deal with.
Yeah, there are hundreds of collateral consequences that a person faced, not only for being convicted of a crime, but just even being arrested. So you may have people who get arrested for something and the charges are dropped, they still face collateral consequences. And so, whether it's access to housing, whether it's access to employment or economic mobility, and in cases of where there is a conviction, access to participate in democracy, right? And a lot of these challenges are based on fruitless beliefs or illusory beliefs of what it takes to help rehabilitate, or how do we react to people who've made mistakes or who have committed crimes in this country.
So what kind of projects is your organization working on right now?
I think, we could talk about, the work that we're doing to secure safe and affordable housing for people that has a record or employment, or even our work that everybody knows about as it relates to voting rights or having access to democracy. But there's a much broader work that we're engaged in, and that is how do we humanize people who've made mistakes, right? That, America is like the #1 country in incarcerating its own citizens. And you could imagine what that number is as far as arresting its own citizens. I could tell you that, there are millions upon millions upon millions of people across this country who either have a criminal record or have been convicted of a felony offense. And too often, the narrative that drives the policies that impact people that have some kind of negative interaction with our justice system is a narrative that dehumanizes those individuals and seems to make people forget that, man, these are human beings. They're someone's father, mother, sister, brother, uncle, grandmother, grandfather. And so the work that we're doing is trying to reverse that trend, right? Because there's nothing to substantiate some of the policies that are implemented. For instance, we claim as a society that we want to feel safe, and I believe that. Everybody wants to live in a safe community, all right? And part of that reaction is to arrest people that commit crimes or try to deter crimes, right? But the problem is that if we're really wanting to be safe, we would not erect barriers. When people have completed their sentence, we would not erect barriers that prevent them from successfully reintegrating. And one of the biggest fallacies is determining what type of policies is implemented based on whether or not a person was convicted of a violent or nonviolent offense, right? Because it makes no sense, right? Because if someone even committed a more serious offense and they've served their time, and we know that 95% of people who are incarcerated are going to come back home, what does it benefit society to make it harder for someone who committed a more serious offense to find housing, to get a job, to get education? We would want them, especially if you're really concerned, you would double down on the efforts to make sure that these individuals are able to successfully reintegrate back in the community. And we don't do that, right? And part of that is because folks don't see the humanity in people like me. And then the second thing is that this is a false narrative that drives a lot of the policies that is based on nothing.
And lots of hypocrisy as well.
Most definitely.
So what is your story? If you don't mind, would you tell us about you and how you got involved in this kind of work?
Yeah, part of it, I think my story is like the American dream in a way, right? Because I think this country is a nation of second chances. You know, I come from very humble beginnings, entered into the military, got addicted to drugs, ended up getting court-martialed and kicked out of the military and came back home and still was addicted to drugs, and eventually it led me in and out of jails and prisons. And to one day, you know, in 2005, I was actually standing in front of railroad tracks waiting on the train to come so I can jump in front of it. Right, hooked on crack cocaine, unemployed, recently released from prison, homeless. I had nothing going for me. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, and I wanted to end my life. But God had other plans, and the train never came. And I ended up crossing those tracks. I ended up checking myself into drug treatment. From there, I moved into a homeless shelter, and while there, I decided to enroll in college. And I ended up getting several degrees at Miami-Dade College, paralegal degree, pre-law degree, and even a bachelor's degree in public safety management with a concentration in criminal justice. Eventually, I was accepted into law school at Florida International University College of Law. May of 2014, I graduated with a Juris Doctorate. Now, you would think that's enough, but I even went further. I ended up forming this organization, Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, and led the effort. I came up with the idea of a ballot initiative to restore voting rights to people who have a previous felony conviction, and we were successful in 2018, where over 1.4 million people now were able to have their voting rights restored. From those efforts, I've been named one of the 100 most influential people from Time Magazine. I have been named Floridian of the Year, Central Floridian of the Year. I have been awarded the MacArthur Genius Grant. And of course, most recently, our organization has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And so when I said at the beginning that this is one of the stories that people can, I mean, it's an all-American, great American story about coming back from the bottom and coming back from disaster, being able to overcome obstacles, right, and to succeed in life. And so, you know, when I think about my story, it's no longer a story to be ashamed about. It's a story to be proud of, because so many Americans are facing obstacles in their lives. So many Americans have made mistakes in their lives. But I'm here as an example that you can overcome those things, and not only overcome them, but you can do great things.
It is not just inspirational, but the lives that you've touched and the people who whose lives are changed because of your organization and because of your story.
And let me tell you, it goes even beyond that, right? And more folks in Florida are starting to see this. You know, a part of my journey was finding an amazing woman to be my wife, you know, and I tell folks that I didn't choose her. God chose her for me. I was just smart enough to recognize it, right? But, you know, when I started Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, she played a very important role. My wife is Sheena Mead, and she helped build that organization, and she played some very crucial roles in our Amendment 4 campaign, extremely crucial roles. But now she's taken what she's learned, and she started her own organization, Clean Slate Initiative, which now automate record clearing for millions of people across the country. They just passed something in New York to where over 2.5 million people will automatically have their records cleared. And about 2 weeks before in Michigan, where 1 million people in one day automatically had their records cleared. And so when you talk about touching people's lives, you know, we can only see as far as we can see. You know, I could tell you like 1.4 million people. She could probably tell you about 5 or 6 million people. But it actually goes further beyond that, right? Because we would never fully understand or appreciate, right, the number of people who have been inspired, who have been, you know, renewed with hope that we would never hear of, you know. And so the impact is exponential. And that's why I encourage people that, man, listen, you could take things in your life and use it for good and have it impact other people's lives. And don't look at the numbers in front of you, because the real numbers are numbers that you will never be able to calculate.
Desmond, it is an honor to have you here today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and congratulations on the Nobel Prize nomination and the FAMU honorary degree as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, that was. I'm glad you mentioned that because we also just a couple of weeks ago, I gave the commencement speech at Bard College in New York, where I was conferred an honorary doctorate degree. And this particular program, and it's a program that I would love to see in Florida, where these colleges are going into these prisons and working with the people that are in these prisons to obtain associates and bachelor's and even master degrees, right? And Yale just recently graduated its first class within a prison. And so I want to see like FAMU, I want to see FIU, right, replicate that because the amount of impact that it can have on society, not only just on the people's lives, but on society, is tremendous. And so I was really honored to be a part of that, and it really moved me in a very profound way.
Well, we are honored to have you here today. Thank you again. And Desmond Meade, again, changing lives and making a difference for everybody.
Yes.
Recognized by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2019, Desmond Meade presently leads efforts to empower and civically re-engage local communities across the state and to reshape local, state, and national criminal justice policies. More Legal Connections is coming up. Stay with us.